Let's talk about that moment when you've been choosing and changing and working on yourself and making big demands of yourself, and somebody looks at you and says, "You've changed." I haven't had a lot of this, to be honest, but I spend a lot of time right here by myself. So I'm not around a lot of people. But I wanted to address this very specifically because we're talking a lot in this 30-day challenge about, well, in the 30-day coach setup, you are spending time every single day instituting a new business. And in this video series, I am addressing a lot of those bigger meta topics that you need to be looking at if you want to completely change your life, which is what you do when you choose to start a business. You completely change your life. And I've been reading a lot in the book 10x is easier than 2x. And yesterday I was making dinner and I was listening to the Audible and I ran across chapter 2. Well, that's what was on. I was listening to it. 10x the quality of everything you do. In the first 3 chapters, they're going through kind of the principles of 10xing your life. And in the beginning of this chapter, Dan tells a story of a guy named Chad. And Chad was, at the beginning of our story, 24 years old. He had just graduated. He was being trained by Merrill Lynch to do investments. Chad decided on his own, just chose out of the blue to not take on a client that was had less than $100,000 in investments. Now, hang on, this does relate to you, I promise. He basically, at the very beginning of his journey, set a standard or what was going to work for him and the way he wanted to live his life that nobody else was doing. Nobody else who was his age and everything was setting those kind of standards. But he did it. And so for like 6 months, he was in his job and he was doing all the work of a brand new investment agent and getting nothing. It was just crickets. He was making hundreds of connections, but because he had this choice he was making that I'm not going to work with anybody who has less than this, he wasn't having a lot of success. And then 6 months later, he got his first. Now, this relates to the topic at hand. You've changed. The first thing I want to say about this with Chad is that Chad basically was like, was different out of the box, right? I wasn't. I mean, I was different out of the box, but I really built my life to look similar to everyone else. And over time, as I started to really choose and like 10x my life, that's what we're kind of talking about. My older friends just started to fall away. We just didn't have much to talk about. And now I find in the things that I'm choosing, it's a very solo journey. It's not that you don't have playmates. It's not that you don't have people around you. You don't have compatriots in that kind of 10x vision or where you're going with your life, but it's the power of aloneness. And this is the thing, when you're choosing something greater, people tend to go, the crabs in the bucket tend to go, why aren't you down here with us? Well, Chad didn't really mess with any of that. He just like jumped up and started doing his own thing. Well, the story kind of goes on and just talks about Chad's successes. But where we got to in the story, which is what I thought was really interesting and I wanted to share with you, was to go greater. To go 10x. So when I use the word 10x, let's just assume I mean greater. To go greater in whatever it is that you're doing in your life, to go 10x, you simplify by continually letting go of everything that doesn't match that energy. Now, I'm a little bit paraphrasing. Here's how he said it. To go 10x, you simplify your focus by continually letting go of everything that doesn't meet your 10x filter. But it's essentially the same exact thing. It's like when you are leveling up your life, you become willing to let go of what doesn't match where you're going anymore. Most entrepreneurs don't achieve the same kind of growth because they shut down when they encounter resistance. And he tells a little bit of an example. Anytime someone wants you to remain as you are, so let's say you are already in business or you have already been creating your life in a particular way. Anytime someone wants you to remain as you are, they do so for their own self-preservation. Your evolution threatens their current security, and they want that security more than the freedom that you seek. It's just plain uncomfortable at first. And this is one of the most common reasons that people and entrepreneurs don't go 10x. They don't go exponential. They don't look at what they've created so far and go, okay, if I knew not this, then what? If I were going to have exponential growth, what would I be aware of and what would I choose? Would I be able to function in the same ways I've functioned before? So it's a common reason people and entrepreneurs don't go 10x. They know it will make those around them feel uncomfortable for a time. Anybody ever notice that when you just do big, massive changes, the people around you get pretty uncomfortable? They don't recognize you anymore. They don't have any reference points for you anymore. They can't fit you in the same box. You're not behaving in the same way. To avoid this discomfort in themselves and those closest to them, most people opt for 2x, like slight change, rather than great change. So as you radically evolve through the great change process, the 10x process, many people in your life won't comprehend the evolution you've experienced. It will defy logic and reality to them, and therefore they will disregard or entirely avoid seeing the changes you've made. 10x can indeed repel 2x. And just to translate this, like your choices for bigger than anybody else can see, for bigger than you've chosen before, will repel anybody else who's not willing to choose those same things. It's just a natural thing. By embracing the 10x process, you will evolve internally and externally far more than the average person. Although the 10x process is available to all people who choose freedom over security. Most people are afraid to shed old standards and strategies, especially ones that worked. How many of you guys have a business? In that business, or how many of you guys want to get into business? This is really relevant to if you want to change your life by doing something else, which we call business, or if you already have a business. Inevitably, in that process of creating your life, whether you're working for someone else or you're working for yourself, you're going to want something different, something greater. And that's exactly what I'm going through right now. I'm like, something so different that I have never chosen it before. Like none of the things that we were doing before are going to work for where we're going now. What does that mean? I don't know yet. But it's the thing, like most people are afraid to shed old standards and strategies, especially the ones that worked. Chad exhibits a quality, this guy that we talked about, that only the world's top achievers do, the ability to rapidly accept a new identity. Now, I thought this was really relevant because this is one of the things that's happening for me as I'm really like, if I were 10xing, what would I choose? What would I choose? And I'm allowing that energy to like change everything for me. I'm recognizing that I'm becoming the new person. This is what happens every time you choose greater than you've chosen before. You start becoming that new person. Now, he puts it as accepting a new identity. I would say becoming you, becoming more you, making a greater choice. But he goes, he let go of being the guy who made hundreds of cold calls a day. He let go of being the first in the office and the last to leave. He let go of being one of the top dogs at one of the biggest financial firms in the world. Chad basically took all these things that gave him status and gave him people's validation and was like, yep, and I'm going somewhere totally other. So he let go of needing to always be available and look fancy in a suit. He let go of being the guy who answered his own emails, attended client meetings, or even had his own office. He let go of seeing busyness as a status symbol. He let go of trying to please anybody that wasn't in his 20%. So there's more conversations in this book about like only putting your attention in the 20% that's going to move the needle. None of the things he let go of were bad. Indeed, many of them were crucial aspects in Chad getting to where he got. So this, I think, is really important to look at. What are the things that got you here? Are those the same things that are going to get you to where you want to go? And it doesn't matter how you apply this conversation, whether you want to get somewhere greater in your relationship, or you want to get somewhere greater in your business, or you want to get somewhere greater wherever you want to get. It's got to be willing to let go of even good things that got you there in favor of only the things that are going to get you where you're going, which, by the way, only you can see. Nobody else can see where you're going except you. You are the one with the vision. You are the one. So, yet to continually expand and 10x himself, he had to evolve beyond his then identity. And you kind of have to look at how have you created your identity. I can speak for myself and go, definitely, I, unbeknownst to me, created an identity as an access consciousness facilitator. Now, I'm still a facilitator, but the identity of an access consciousness facilitator has dissipated because I recognized that what I was doing with that identity is I was trapping myself into certain ways of doing things. Nobody put that on me. That was something I invented for myself. But in that trap, things couldn't change. They couldn't go exponential. To have an exponential growth, I was going to have to be willing to lose everything that I'd created so far, all of my fixed ideas about what it took to create business, and really look at, if I were just going to go from here to here, what would I choose? Break the frame of there's got to be stair steps. There's got to be a process. It's like, what if there didn't have to be? What if that thing that I think is going to take me 5 years, 10 years could be accomplished in 6 months? What points of view do I need to let go of? What identity do I need to let go of? All that stuff do I need to be willing to lose? What approval from other people do I need to let go of? What club do I need to leave? And none of this is like bad stuff. And nobody's doing it to me, to you. It's just stuff that gets accumulated over the process of getting to where you are. Now, can you get to where you want to go with what you did to get to where you are? Or do you need to be willing to let go of that in favor of something else? So Chad shed the identity that got him here for the identity that would get him there. That's awesome. Once he was in the process and something kind of became double again, 2x, he let that 80% go again, passing it off to a capable who, or eliminating it altogether. There's a lot of woven conversations in this. I apologize. He further simplified his life down to the 10x standard, which most excited him, choosing an increasingly niche and nuanced 20% focus and mastery. So there's more here, but what I think is important is your identity is fundamentally two things. It's number one, the story or the narrative you have for yourself. And number two, the standards or the commitments that you hold for yourself. The scientific definition of identity is a well-organized conception of self consisting of values and beliefs to which the individual is solidly committed. And I really have had to face this in the last 3 months with what I'm asking for and what I'm choosing. I'm like, whoa, which is why you've heard me talk a lot about, like, am I recertifying? It has nothing to do with any backstory of access consciousness. It has to do with, I've got to be willing to let my entire identity break apart for me to get access to the me that's going to go there. And I didn't even realize that was kind of an official thing until I read it in a book somewhere. I was like, oh, I've just been kind of doing this, but I've been experiencing it. So put simply, your identity as a person is what you're most committed to. It's the story about yourself that you're committed to, and it's the personal standards that you're committed to. A standard is a level of quality and a norm you set for yourself. It's a commitment. So you rarely go outside of it, which is why we talk about in access consciousness, like, would you be willing to destroy and uncreate all your standards? Why would you do that? Well, so that you can get access to the choices you really have, So we are all committed to standards that we've set for ourselves, even if we don't realize it. And the standards can be positive or negative. It's just standards. Take, for example, my friend who's an avid, here we go, World of Warcraft player. He invests about 16 hours a day playing and is one of the top players on his online server. Recently, he told me he left his guild, and I asked him, why did you leave? And he goes, they weren't up to my standard. I want to play with more serious players. And I am saying that he's using the word standard a lot. I would invite you to even look at this a little bit differently. Why did you leave? what if it's not that they're not up to your standard, but that you are choosing something greater? Because this is also a really interesting conversation where you can get into judgment very easily. Judgment always destroys. Remember that? Consciousness includes, judgment destroys. But consciousness includes you. And the one person that we tend to exclude is ourselves. So, when you're looking at your life and what you want that's greater, let's call it 10x, let's call it whatever, and you're only doing 2x, are you including you? Are you including what you truly desire, what you truly want to live, what you truly. And so that's what I see here is like, I want to play with more serious players. He wants to include himself and actually move on to players that are just different. So, although you may not be interested in online video games, and neither am I, the point is that we all have standards that we choose for ourselves. We choose the standards we care about as well as the level we hold those standards to. So, this kind of goes into a little bit of a different pathway, but I think what was the big point I wanted to really make today? Anytime someone wants you to remain as you are, they do so for their own self-preservation. That's really, really important for all of us to know. If you have anybody in your life that's like, please don't change, please don't change, please don't change, that's for them. Okay. And I guess the second big thing is like, are you holding on to the person that got you here? And do you need to be willing to shed that person in order to go where you're going? For those of you guys that asked for a list of the books that I'm reading right now that are just like absolutely changing my life, I made you a link. You can actually go to crystaljoycrawford.com/reads and grab that. I'm just putting it up here for us. crystaljoycrawford.com/reads. And you can grab my list there's 32 books that I have just been devouring lately, including the access books that you can grab at that link. And I hope you get a lot out of that list of books. This is just one in a series of books that I am just like allowing to transform my thinking and invite me to something greater and allow me to come forward as more of me. But I guess the thing I want to leave you with today is, would you be willing to let go of who you were for who you can choose to be? Share this with a friend who needs it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.